The Strait of Hormuz erupted into turmoil at OFA for 5 hours, when 44 Iranian naval vessels emerged from obscurity in a synchronized assault configuration that Defense Department strategists had feared for 20 years. 4 frigates obstructing the Narrows, 40 speed attack vessels swarming like angry insects, all ships weaponized, all personnel at combat readiness, all captains under directives not to retreat. This wasn't a surveillance operation. This was Iran wagering its complete naval capability on one devastating calculation: that the United States wouldn't risk answering with crushing force in waters 20 miles from Iranian coastline. They miscalculated. Within 60 seconds, American Aegis platforms secured weapons targeting on all Iranian ships at once. Fire control detection systems marked objectives with electromagnetic exactness. Submarines whose existence was unknown ascended to attack positions. Combat jets launched from carrier surfaces with adequate munitions to convert the complete Iranian array into wreckage zones. The technological onslaught that Tehran's strategists had catastrophically misjudged was about to showcase the merciless calculations of 21st century maritime combat, where bravery and quantity signify nothing against firepower refreshing 50 times per second. The Revolutionary Guard had just activated the precise countermeasure framework the U.S. Navy engineered specifically to obliterate swarm approaches. And in the following 12 minutes, professional commanders on both factions would struggle desperately to stop politicians from initiating a conflict that would persist exactly as long as it requires American weapons to traverse 180 kilometers at Mach 3.5. This is what transpired when Iran violated the boundary the United States had established in violence and metal across the Persian Gulf. The Iranian approach materialized with harsh precision. Deploy the frigates as an obvious barrier to generate political spectacle, while the speed vessels constituted the genuine danger flooding from several directions to take advantage of the carrier formation's worst-case situation. Each bog hammer vessel costs perhaps $150,000 to construct and equip. The USS Abraham Lincoln costs $13 billion. Even sacrificing 30 vessels to eliminate one carrier. The strategic calculations favor Iran's position. That's the hypothesis. That's what renders swarm approaches so hazardous in restricted waterways. The Strait of Hormuz measures 21 miles across at its tightest section, with commercial routes compressed into passages scarcely 2 miles wide. This confrontation was engineered to compel the United States to either recognize Iranian authority or answer with force that would provoke international criticism. The Supreme National Security Council sanctioned this function with defined boundaries, prove that American carrier formations cannot merely pass through Iranian-monitored territory without repercussion. The directive halted barely short of sanctioning weapons discharge. Yet in maritime confrontations, that boundary becomes perilously ambiguous when scores of armed ships intersect at elevated velocity. What Iranian strategists fundamentally misjudged was the technological transformation that had reshaped American maritime combat. The Aegis warfare platform wasn't merely enhanced detection. It was a total battlefield grid that secured complete information supremacy, refreshed in actual time and shared at once across all American assets within 200 kilometers. The USS Port Royal and USS Sterett triggered their SPY-1D phased array detection systems and within 0.4 seconds secured total targeting lock on every single Iranian ship at once, not progressive monitoring. Concurrent engagement capacity. The platform determined firing calculations, refreshed danger evaluations, ranked objectives, and distributed weapons quicker than any human leader could analyze the unprocessed intelligence. The technological separation wasn't gradual. It was epoch-defining. Iranian frigates functioned with 1980s generation fire control mechanisms that might monitor perhaps for objectives. Simultaneously, American Aegis cruisers could attack 30 objectives at once with autonomous missiles. Iranian detection personnel observed displays presenting American vessels. American personnel observed displays presenting Iranian vessels, their precise velocity, trajectory, armament condition, electromagnetic broadcasts, and determined likelihood of mission elimination for each ship, surpassing 97%. This is where asymmetric combat hypothesis crashes into technological actuality. Swarm approaches function when protectors can't monitor and attack several objectives at once. They collapse devastatingly when all attackers transform into indexed objectives before they even reach weapons distance. The Iranians were implementing 2008 strategy against 2024 systems, and the discrepancy was about to become lethally apparent. The underwater aspect exposed Iran's strategic myopia even more strikingly. 2 Los Angeles-class attack submarines had stationed themselves days prior, their passive acoustic arrays monitoring diesel propulsion signatures from ranges where Iranian vessels couldn't even hypothetically identify them. Each submarine held Mark 48 ADCAP torpedoes that could attack surface objectives from 30 kilometers distance with near absolute elimination likelihood. Iranian leaders organizing their surface confrontation possessed zero consciousness that American submarines could annihilate their complete array before they even realized they faced assault. The aviation element amplified the discrepancy exponentially. 8F A-18E Super Hornets deployed within 4 minutes, each holding for a GM-8 for Harpoon anti-vessel missiles with 120-kilometer distance. These jets weren't functioning separately. They were components in the Aegis grid obtaining live targeting intelligence from vessels, orbital platforms, and E-to-D Hawkeye early alert aircraft. All pilots could observe all objectives at once with weapons pre-distributed and attack progressions determined mechanically. Iranian air protections confronted methodical interference from A-18G Growlers that diminished detection capability to near worthlessness. Iran's F-14 Tomcats and MiG-29 Fulcrums remained on airstrips unable to deploy because their ground-directed engagement mechanism couldn't secure the detection picture, essential for successful guidance. The atmosphere above the confrontation belonged completely to the United States. Iran committed for frigates and 40 speed vessels constituting perhaps 60% of their functional surface navy. The United States positioned 1 carrier battle formation constituting approximately 8% of its accessible worldwide maritime strength. Yet the American capability could at once attack all Iranian ships with several redundant armament platforms while sustaining protection reserves. The numerical edge Iran attempted to harness through swarm approaches had been eliminated before the initial vessel violated the protection boundary. At 053 for hours, 3 Boghammer vessels accelerated to 40 knots advancing straight toward the carrier formation, and the confrontation reached its pivotal judgment moment. Standard engagement regulations are definite. Ships closing within 500 meters at elevated velocity, while disregarding radio alerts display aggressive intention warranting instant protection action. The action arrived with deliberate exactness. The USS Sterrett's Phalanx proximity armament platform discharged a 3-second burst of 20 mm projectiles across the primary vessel's bow at 4,500 projectiles per minute. 270 rounds of depleted uranium munition converted the ocean into a churning cauldron of white spray and hypersonic steel. Within 8 seconds, every single speed vessel had diminished velocity and modified trajectory away from the carrier formation. That exhibition conveyed multiple messages at once. American protection mechanisms would attack without delay when danger specifications were Satisfied, the alert discharge was accurately regulated, signifying genuine attack would be crushingly precise. The technological separation permitted proportional action alternatives. Iranian platforms couldn't replicate. Iranian leaders could solely select between not discharging whatsoever or discharging everything, while Americans could adjust from alert discharges through incremental action up to complete obliteration. The expansion rotation intensified instantly at 0537 hours. Fire-controlled detection from both American cruisers secured weapon lock on every Iranian frigate. In contemporary maritime combat, this constitutes the concluding stage before genuine weapon deployment. Iranian electronic countermeasure rays identified the lock instantly, and all captains grasped the ramifications. They'd penetrated the elimination sequence. Their personal anti-detection weapons required continuous detection monitoring for aiming, which would reveal them to American anti-detection weapons. The technological calculations presented zero beneficial results. The intelligence scenario Tehran was obtaining depicted devastating actuality. Iranian leaders transmitted that American interference had diminished their detection platforms to borderline operation. They possessed zero submarine identification capacity. Aerial dangers they couldn't sufficiently monitor were orbiting overhead. The technological advantage wasn't borderline edge. It was crushing supremacy across all domains. At the same moment, Russian military consultants integrated with Iranian units were conveying pressing suggestions for instant reduction following their orbital surveillance verified the complete American arrangement. The strategic assessment was harsh. Iran's complete 2024 protection spending stood at $24.6 billion aggregate, while one American carrier battle formation constituted above $35 billion in resources. Senior IRGC commanders were delivering worst-scenario examination, calculating their complete blocking capability could be eliminated in below 12 minutes. If combat started, 12 minutes from initial weapon deployment to total annihilation of 4 frigates and 40 vessels. That's computational certainty according to established weapons capability and proven technological capacity. The separation wasn't something instruction or bravery could bridge. The dignity-preserving retreat materialized from this unachievable combat circumstance. The Iranian leader aboard the Sahand conveyed on International Frequency 16 that surveillance functions had effectively confirmed navigation liberty, and the Ray would presently withdraw to harbor following proving Iranian sea independence. The wording was meticulously formulated to permit both factions to assert triumph, without either abandoning stance totally. Iranian government broadcasting transmitted film asserting effective opposition to American hostility. American authorized declarations observed solely that external ships vacated the passage without event. Both accounts fulfilled internal political needs while preventing the devastating confrontation that had neared within moments of actualization. The intelligence captures disclosed the unachievable stance Iranian leaders confronted. They'd been warned with military tribunal if they retreated without securing assignment goals, yet confronted identical outcome if their vessels were harmed. Professional maritime commanders stopped politicians from initiating a battle that would have persisted roughly 12 minutes before Iran's surface navy terminated existing as operational capability. The USS Abraham Lincoln pursued passage through the Strait of Hormuz without discharging armaments past the alert burst, proving that crushing technological advantage secures tactical goals without essentially using complete destructive capability. The event confirmed American functional methods for protecting premium resources in limited waterways against swarm strikes, while revealing core constraints in Iranian asymmetric combat strategy. The geopolitical consequences cascaded through territorial protection design instantly. Gulf Cooperation Council nations monitoring this confrontation absorbed harsh teachings about functional boundaries of opposing American maritime footprint through standard capability. Israeli military organizers integrated all intelligence about Iranian maritime systems and American actions into emergency arrangements for probable territorial battles. Russia and China performed thorough examination of American integrated combat platform performance, while quickening initiatives to create responses to Aegis category systems. Both countries observed that numerical edge and territorial water familiarity confirmed inadequate against networked combat platforms engineered particularly to counter swarm approaches. For Iran particularly, the confrontation revealed tactical weaknesses that revolutionary statements couldn't bridge. Tehran's territorial sway relies partially on believable capacity to endanger American concerns and seal the Strait of Hormuz if battle ignites. This event confirmed such warnings carry expenses potentially surpassing obtainable advantages. The Strait of Hormuz confrontation ultimately strengthened current authority patterns, rather than opposing them. Iran proved readiness to oppose American maritime footprint but couldn't bridge the technological imbalance that characterized contemporary maritime combat. The United States confirmed protection mechanisms and functional methods while preventing expansion that would have activated wider territorial emergency. The calculations of contemporary maritime confrontation don't value bravery, revolutionary passion, or national dignity. They value detection distance, weapons capability, grid coordination, and live intelligence analysis. In all quantifiable aspects, American platforms exceeded Iranian systems by differences that rendered combat results fundamentally predetermined. The sole inquiry was whether professional commanders could stop political burden from compelling attack that would reveal this imbalance through genuine warfare. The event confirmed they could, minimum this occasion. The subsequent confrontation will examine whether that professional control persists under alternative political situations. The Strait of Hormuz ensures there will be a subsequent occasion. The sole ambiguity is whether the result stays nonviolent